Okay, so welcome everyone to another video, and I thought, well, it has been a while to be fair, so I thought I'd just jump right in and have a go at the latest Apex challenge, which was very kindly sent in by Jeff Wilson. So I'm just going to basically run through it, how I would approach it, edit it along the way, up to the export, and again, this is what's so great about photography. You may not agree with what I do, but hopefully you can take away something that will hopefully help you in your editing at home. So first thing I'm going to start with is, quite clearly to me, is this is quite an overexposed area, but I can see at the histogram we're only just clipping, so there's going to be lots of detail there that we can actually recover, and I can do that straight away by just dragging the highlights down, and straight away we've recovered all that detail, so I know that's in there to play with. So I'm going to make my screen full and use my usual process. So something I've been using a lot recently is this 21:9 crop, something that seems to work quite well with aircraft. So let's set about making this. So I quite like what's going on in the sky. There's a bit of drama in those clouds, so I don't want to lose all that area. But over here is quite dark and there's not a lot going on. So we'll see if the 21:9 crop fits this. I think it may be just a little bit narrow in the frame, so actually I'm going to ditch that for the 16:9. That might just allow us a little bit of the foreground and plenty more of that sky. You can see some nice stars as well going on. So how I like to line mine up is using, on the rule of thirds, you can press the O key in the crop tool to cycle through the different composition style options. So there's actually two rule of thirds. There's the smaller version, which could work quite well for this, but I like to use that mainly. Yes, I'm going to use that and keep this line here on that wing line, and that I think is a good way of separating out the image into some parts like that. So I just want to make sure that's level, and actually we can make sure we do the lens corrections. I'm not really sure why Adobe Lightroom put these so far down the panel. Ideally I'd want them up here or even in with the crop tool, because as hopefully you can see there, there's a little bit of barrel distortion going on. So we can see from the data down here that Jeff used the Sigma 10 to 20 mm lens. Well, something that wide is going to have some distortion, so you just see that there. And if you're not happy with, you can still mess around, and I quite like the natural vignette that that lens has caused, so I'm going to actually drag that slider back down and leave it there. So I think I'm happy with how that's looking. I might just bring that line over to that'll do quite nicely, and I might actually come down a little bit. I get very indecisive at this kind of thing. No, in fact, let's not do that. I'm going to put it back to where it was. So now I can attack this how I was going to. I'm going to take the exposure down a little bit to start with, because it is a night shot after all, so there are going to be plenty of dark areas in this. So like we talked about in the histogram videos before, we don't need to worry about recovering any of that black detail because it isn't there. It's a night shot. It's not going to be captured at the time of shooting anyway. So let's take the saturation away again, and I'm just going to use the Alt and drag the slider and find out where those black points are. And actually it's just starting to turn black there. The white, well, I'm going to take that. Sometimes it's just better to leave the whites alone when there's plenty to play with, and use the highlight slider first see what data we've recovered, and then maybe just use that white slider to bolster the other whites back up. I'm thinking that's looking quite good. Now the shadows. I might opt to use the shadows more locally here, because I don't want to be uncovering. I want it to stay looking like a night shot. So yeah, I think that's looking quite good now. Let's just have a look, see where we came from. Already we've recovered all that detail on the jet nose and down the side of the fuselage. So now have a look, see what the contrast can do. I quite like the way that's just biting at about there. That's quite cool. So there's a couple of other things that I'm going to address now. So a couple of things I'm going to ask myself here is, do I want this shot to stay authentic or more faithful, as we would call it? And knowing Wellesbourne, where this was taken, there's obviously you've got the road that runs along the end of the runway. So do I actually want those light trails there? Well, if I want to keep it authentic to the period, then I'm probably going to use it. Lose it, sorry. So the latest update to Lightroom has actually given us a load more tools. Now you may remember some of this was early access, and we now have fully generative AI in Lightroom now, so we don't have to switch to Photoshop for this. So you simply make sure you tick this. Now we're not removing any objects, so I'm going to leave that box unticked, and I'm simply going to make a selection, hold shift, draw a straight line, and just over anywhere I can get rid of that sign while we do this. I might do that in little sections, so let's get rid of that. This does require internet access, so it may take a few minutes. There we go, that's done an amazing job. And what it will give you is 3 options that it thinks its artificial intelligent brain do, but because it's such a dark area, that's done that straight away for us, so we can do that, and we can go into the next selection now. So there's another sign there to get rid of. Now there's a very faint outline of some ghosting going on here, which I'm guessing must be some ground crew members, maybe a reenactor, or some part of the shoot going on. He's just walked away, but I might be able to target that more with just a bit of classic dodge and burn. That looks a little bit like Morse code. Just let that work its magic again. There we go. That's worked its magic. Just cycle through the options. So it hasn't done a great job of removing those 2 bits, but that's not to worry. I'll go back in, and actually I'll lose the generative fill this time and just use the content aware. So all that's doing is copying other parts of the image on there more intelligently than the clone tool. There's some lights there I might just get rid of as well. Too fussed about that. And then in the context of the whole image, I might also lose this board here. To me, that's a little bit distracting on the eye. Could use the generative AI here, but I'm just doing this a little bit quicker than I normally would. There you go. So that's cleaned that image up no end already. So now it's time to get down to the other panel. So something that works so well with night shots is this clarity slider. What that's doing is targeting the mid-tonal areas and applying contrast in there, which gets this lovely bite going. And something that can cause halos though, so you need to be careful. It does just bring out the details in that very, very nicely. And a little bit of texture, but that is just adding a little bit too much to the ground for my liking, so I'm going to keep that low down. So now let's have a look. I think overly from that red light, it's actually making this image a little bit too warm. So I'm just going to tone that back slightly. And then the same with the tint. I just think there's a little bit of green there. Obviously a lot of light pollution in the sky, but I'm not too fussed on that. That's looking quite good now. So now that's also something else I've just spotted. There must be a little speck of rain on the lens maybe. So actually I will use the generative AI this time and just remove that little piece of lens flare. There you go, can't even tell. Fantastic. So now continue to work down the panel, a little bit of dehaze, not much. It can just add that nice sort of bite of blue. So now I might start with the masking. Now something I always like to do with night shoots is always darken the foreground and lead the eye into the rest of the image. And I have a preset brush for this, or preset local adjustment, darken foreground tool, and then I've already set the sliders. May not work quite so well with those puddles. Something like that maybe. See what that looks like without it, with and without, and I think that's just a nice little, back it off with the overall slider. I think that's just a nice subtle change. It just helps to lead the eye into the subject and stop that foreground being quite as distracting. Now let's see how good this is at finding the sky. I'm going to subtract it from the subject. Sometimes it just needs that extra prompt. It's not too bad. It's missed little bits, but we'll go with that, because what I'm actually going to do is boost the whites on the sky alone and hopefully begin to bring out that drama in those clouds. Don't want to brighten it too much, because that's going to introduce a lot of unsightly noise. I'm thinking there looks good. Do we lose that green tint a little bit? So that's without and with, and I think that just adds a subtle amount of something else to the image. Now I can start to, now the things I've done, I've started to bring out this guy down here, or the ghosting of him. So I'm just going to take the exposure down, make sure I've got a nice feather and a low, fairly low flow rate, and just paint this, see if painting this guy out will work, because there's nothing much behind there. Might need a little bit of, I think we'll just attack that with maybe just the content aware to get rid of what I'm assuming is his head here. Let's get rid of that and that. from a distance. Not going to be able to tell at all. Much better. Right, now we could use the tone curve here. Let's just have a look, see what lurking in the rest of this image. Let's see, just a little lift on the areas can just make that prop pop in a way that you might not have expected. Don't want to raise the highlights too much because we're going to start blowing out. Just lift it from this end, and I think way too much of that. Just without and with, and it's just a very subtle difference again. So now I'm going to target these lights, have a look, go through the colour channels, something like that's good, that's good, yellow, purple, not much magenta going on. So I might take yellow and the green down to stop that grass being quite as distracting. Just targeting the nose, isn't it? That's okay. Purple. What's happening there? Now another little neat trick that I've touched on before is actually you can add your own colour in, of course, but also this slider here, a bit of a hidden gem for lifting the mid-tones in what as it looks a little bit of a flat image. Can always just breathe a little bit of life into it. Oh, we've gone a little bit too far there. So a little bit of noise in the sky, so might choose to run this through the AID noise, but what that does have the adverse effect is overriding your AI adjustments. Now I'm going to hit, helps if I press the wrong button, right button of course. Masking there. More to that. It's looking a little better. Add a little bit of vignette to draw your eye right into the centre of the image. Very much liking that now. Just the shape of it. Feather it out a little bit. Back it off slightly. Very happy with that. And now I may just touch on the calibration side. Just further make that colour interesting. I'm actually just lifting that to there. It's very nice. Let's pile some vibrance on and then take some saturation away. A nice way of achieving a natural look to the colours. So just from those quick fire, relatively quick fire steps, we've taken the image from looking like that to looking like that, and hopefully, I think you'll agree, there's loads more drama going on there, something more to it. Now we could go on and refine that. I might choose to ignore the puddles and bring this in a little more. In fact, we could fully ignore that side of the image, place the nose firmly on that line. think just needs leveling slightly. Being rather slow. There we go. And hopefully you'll agree that that has taken the image from good to better. And thank you very much to Jeff for sending that one in. And if anybody's got anyone, the email is in the pinned post in the Facebook group. And of course, we now have the YouTube channel, which hopefully you'll be watching this video on. Feel free to comment, like, you know, all the usual things. And just get involved. We'd love to help everybody out. So until then, we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.